All right, good afternoon. It is 4 p.m. Tuesday, April 13th. This is the Airport Commission meeting. I'm Joe Stad, I'm city engineer, and we will call the meeting to order. Being that we don't have officers appointed, I will, in the pro term, just run the meeting here for us. And the first item is the public meeting notice. The public can view this meeting via Zoom. And we'll bring this into the next item is introduction, purpose, and duties. So we'll go around and introduce the commission members.
Wayne Clausen.
Jay Tambernino.
Tyler Zollner.
All right, thank you, commissioners. Within your packet is the most current up-to-date roster, the commission handbook for 2021 that's put together to serve as a guide for your purpose and duties, along with the specific airport commission duties are attached within your packet for your review. Should you have any questions on those items, feel free to contact me at any time and we can go through those. Any questions by the commissioners at this time?
No, it looked good.
All right. Next item up for business is the election of officers. And if it's okay with the commission, we anticipate having a full commission for next month for the May meeting. So I guess it would be my recommendation, if the commission so wishes, to delay the elections until that time. But if you want to appoint yourselves now, you certainly can.
I'd accept your wishes, Joe. That's just fine.
Okay. Make that a motion, Tyler.
I'll make a motion to accept that we postpone election of officers till next meeting.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item would be approval of minutes from the September 8th, 2020 meeting. Should be noted, we attempted to have a meeting in December of 2020, but did not have a quorum. So some of these agenda items may seem familiar, but due to not having a quorum, we will visit those today. So what are your wishes with the minutes?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. With us today, we have Brian Page from Bean Hunt to discuss numerous items with us today, but first thing up on the agenda today is an update on the 2020/2021 taxi lane reconstruction project. So Brian, if you so wish to present.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Members of the commission, thank you for inviting us here. Okay. Thank you for inviting us here today. So, talk a little bit about the project. We have a project that was bid in fiscal year 2020. And the way that the funding works, the federal funding, it comes out usually pretty late in the year. In this case, it came out toward the end of September, early October, before the grant finally got accepted by the city. So the contractor, which is the local paving contractor of M&R, decided to hold off on the project last year rather than getting in and starting something that they couldn't finish before the wet weather and everything kind of settled in last fall. So what the project entailed is what you see here in blue on this, this drawing here. Everything in blue was the base part of the project that was bid last year, and that was funded through a Federal Aviation Administration grant. So that's already under grant and ready to go for the spring of this year. What is new is last year, as part of the project, is this area that you see kind of in magenta color. That area was actually proposed last year to actually happen as an alternate bid item. But the problem of it is the way the bids came in last year, it was higher and it cost more. So that part of the project could not be awarded last year. But what happens with the federal funding for the airport annually is the airport is eligible for an additional $150,000 grant through the federal government through the non-primary entitlement fund program. So what happened is this year, there is additional funds that is available to be able to take care of the project. So this project is actually being added to the rest of the base project that was already awarded as a supplemental agreement, which is essentially like a change order, if you would. Now that we have the funding, the additional work can be awarded. So that's going to happen. This will actually be part of the grant application here for 2021. And the grant applications are actually going to be due coming up here May 3rd. So we have the prices from last year from M&R Paving. They have decided that they are going to honor the prices from last year. So no cost increase. It's basically what they said, it was going to cost us last year. We just didn't have the money to make the award. So that will be the project. And as I mentioned, that will be going as part of the grant application. The final grant applications are going to be due on May 3rd. Onto the Federal Aviation Administration. So with that, I guess I'll open it up for any questions that anybody might have on that.
Well, if you're not aware, Commissioners, that pavement is in really rough shape.
Yeah.
So it's a much needed project, and we're looking forward to getting that work completed.
Okay, no other questions. We're kind of jumping around a little bit here. I apologize on the agenda of the engineer's kind of update summary that we put together here. But, maybe just to kind of talk a little bit about some of the other projects that are on deck. We are midstream on working on the airport master plan update and airport layout plan update. That work has already started. That work has been underway for quite a while. There's been a little bit of tough road last year with COVID because a lot of what we have to do is there's going to be meetings, face-to-face, in-person meetings that we need to do, public involvement, things like that kind of got a little bit put on hold last year. But now that things are kind of getting a little bit more less restrictive, we're back on track again, and we're about 75% complete with that master planning work, and we hope to wrap that up by the end of this fiscal year for the FAA, which is going to end on September 30th. So the goal is get everything wrapped up by this fall. So we also, as part of that, one of the things that we wanted to do is now that North Star has had a chance to actually get out there and kind of get immersed into the airport and kind of figure out what's going on, we thought it'd be a good idea to meet and visit with them and get together and kind of hear their needs. They've been up and running now since roughly around the first of the year.
Oh, October 15th was their official move-in day, yeah.
Okay. So they're fairly new, but we didn't want to hit them right away with it. We kind of want to give them a chance to kind of get there at the airport and kind of figure out which way is up and then have a chance to talk to them and find out what their needs are. So back in March, on March 18th, we did sit down with them. It was a great meeting. That's where we learned that they currently have 500 and some odd students in their program. And they do plan to use New Ulm as not only as a training area, if you would, for their students, but then also a lot of their AMPs, their mechanics, actually live in the area. So what they're doing is they're bringing a lot of the aircraft here to actually do the maintenance. So it works out pretty well for them. But so we kind of talked through a number of things. We talked about fuel systems. We talked about hangaring. We talked about ramp space. We talked about the crosswind runway. All good information. So it was a productive meeting to sit down with them and kind of hear their point of view.
Yeah, over the last 5 years, they're averaging about a 30% increase in enrollment in the flight program. So it's pretty substantial, the growth that they're seeing. They're saying it's getting close to that of Fargo's program. So it's a good thing for the program over there.
Absolutely. Any questions on the ongoing planning work? Anything related to that or?
I don't have any
Okay.
questions. So.
As part of that same planning effort, there was an element to it, a work item or a task, which basically involves updating the airport land use zoning. And what that is the state of Minnesota has some statutory requirements, being a public airport in the state, and if you are taking public funds in order to be able to help the airport grow, one of the stipulations is they want to see that you are protecting it according to state standards. The airport does have a zoning ordinance that's actually in place. It was adopted, I believe, back in the 1980s. Really, not a whole lot has been done with it since then. So obviously, there's been a lot of changes to the airport. There's been a lot of regulatory changes since then. So we are in the process of updating that airport zoning, and that is part of the agreement tied to the master planning work that we're currently engaged in. Now, with that, what that's going to involve, first and foremost, is the establishment of a joint airport zoning board, better known as a JASB. And that JASB will need to be established first and foremost. And what that is it's a board that basically gets it through the zoning process and basically monitors and regulates that process from start to finish. Now, in many settings, understanding that the JASB is kind of tough to pull that together, there are certain mechanisms in place that you can actually have the airport commission serve as that JASB, but there's a separate procedure that you need to follow in order to be able to make that happen. First and foremost, what you need to do, the JASB is essentially supposed to be comprised of all the different jurisdictions of what the airport zoning boundary encompasses. So if you envision basically where the airport is, and you may know this from your flying days, but the airspace around the airport as well. So you have to look at all of the nearby communities and all the jurisdictions that fall within that boundary. All of them have to be invited to be able to participate in the JASB. Okay, so what you can do though, and what many airport commissions will do, is actually talk to a lot of the jurisdictions, and we have some letters that we can kind of help in this process, but basically what you do is you seek the permission from those different jurisdictions in order to be able to give that permission over to the airport commission for you to actually serve as their representative. So there's roughly, I believe, 5 different townships that are actually, that fall within that boundary and within that zone. So that's something first and foremost that we'll need to be talking about. Now, the sense of urgency behind this is, again, this is tied to that master planning grant. That master planning grant was started a couple of years ago, and it does have a shelf life. The grant is set to expire later on this year in September. So what we need to do is we need to use those funds up before that expires later on this year. So the JASB process, the first thing you need to do is establish the JASB. Once you do that, the next step is you have to actually go through and update your zoning and make it current with all what the current regulations and so forth are. Once you do that, you have to go through the review process with the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the department commissioner as well, and to have them weigh in and comment and take a look at what you're proposing and make sure that it meets all the state regulations and guidelines. Once you do that, then you have to hold public meetings, and you have to invite the public in, take a look at what you're doing, anything that's going to impact the general zoning around the airport. They all have a chance to come in and review and comment, into the process. Once you do that, you go back and you make the revisions, whatever revisions are necessary. Then you move into the adoption phase of the actual ordinance itself. Start to finish, you're looking at about 9 months to complete. So you can see that it's kind of getting down to critical time.
Yeah, we
in order to
don't
be
have
able to
9
meet that.
months
Now,
now.
if we needed some additional time, we can ask for that via an amendment. Understanding, and the state certainly is apprised to the issues that you've had with, having a quorum and having a number of commissioners. But it is something that we should be thinking about in pretty short order, getting the people on board and then making that decision. Does the commission want to basically be the representatives of the JASB, or do we want to bring people in from the outside? So, not that a decision needs to be made now, but Joe and I kind of talked about it, and I know there's a lot of new people here tonight, so I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of it, that that's going to be kind of priority number 1.
So commissioners, I would expect that you'll see this on next month's agenda, so.
Is there any questions about that? I know I kind of gave a broad overview, but I didn't want to really kind of drag down tonight's meeting. There is no action items or anything to take, but I did just basically want to bring it up, make sure that the commission is aware of it, that this is something that we're going to have to dive right into.
So the JASB, You have, they're gonna meet with the various townships, but you're gonna have a public meeting for the township people to comment also, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yep. But the JASB will really be, normally the way we see it work is the JASB will get together on a monthly basis. We'll go through the updates, kind of talk about where we are in the process, talk about any changes, if there are any exemptions. And we can talk about that once we dive into it. But if there's going to be any exemptions asked for as part of the zoning ordinance, we need to talk through that, find out what is an exemption, and then how do you deal with these things going forward. If somebody comes to the city and requests a variance, we have to kind of talk through that as to how that works and, what the, process is going to be for something like that. But what we'll do is we'll go through that process, we'll go through it as a group and talk about it, but there are a couple of opportunities for public meetings. As I mentioned, there's the first meeting, right after you get the review comments back from the Department of Transportation. Once you get those back and you make those edits, then it goes to the commissioner, State of Minnesota Commissioner's Office for DOT. They take a look at it. If they accept it, then they say everything is fine, you're good. But if they have comments, you're gonna have to address those comments, whatever the case is. Once that process is played out, then you have your second meeting, and you meet with the public again. Once you've met with the public, figure out if there are any additional comments, last comments, whatever the case may be, you address those, and then you move forward to adoption.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Okay,
Right.
that's all I had.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, next item on the agenda would be consider adoption and order filed the emergency response plan for North Star Aviation. Little background on that is shortly thereafter, when North Star took over operations, they began the process of developing the ERP, their emergency response plan. I provided some input on some items, really clarifying like the hospital and things like that. It's a pretty standard document that they use at their Bowling Green facility along with their Mankato facility. So my recommendation for you today would be just to adopt it and order it filed, unless you have any comments or noted changes you would like to see within the document itself.
I guess I have no additions after
Yeah,
looking at it.
I don't either.
Pretty standard across.
Yep.
All ERP plans, so.
Well, I move that we adopt it.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is consider adoption and order filed the snow and ice control plan for the New Ulm Municipal Airport. A little background on this, Commissioners, with, for, I don't know, 20, 30 plus years, New Ulm Flight Service was taking care of the snow removal operations at the airport. With them no longer out at the airport, that responsibility fell onto the city as North Star Aviation didn't have the personnel to take care of that, and that was negotiated within the FBO agreement. Their crews do assist during the day. If we have blowing conditions and stuff like that, they'll take the plow out and things of that nature. But after consultation with Mr. Page at Mead and Hunt, it was recommended that we develop an actual ice and snow control plan, since that's something we didn't have. So Mead and Hunt did prepare the document that is before you today. I would say for the first year's worth of snow removal up at the airport, I guess we didn't receive any complaints in the methods that we were doing. We had city staff taking care of the primary runway and taxiways, and then we consulted with a contractor for the aprons and the area, the parking lot area around the hangars. So, and I seem, as far as I know, that seemed to work really well. The FBO didn't have any comments on what we could have done better or anything like that. So that'll probably be the same method going forward, unless we receive comments from our users that we need to revise our methods. So So that's what I have for you, so I guess if there's further discussion, we can go through that right now.
Well, as a user, it seemed pretty good last year.
Never flown in the winter.
I don't do much either.
Yeah, I think it's just fine, Joe. I
Okay.
do.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt an order filed?
I'll make a motion to adopt the snow and ice control plan as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item under new business is a CTAF request to change the CTAF frequency at ULM. Commissioners, this request came from North Star Aviation. Within your packet, there is a email request from Mr. Brian Rutt, who is their safety manager. In addition to that email that is included within your packet, there is a more formal letter that should be sitting at your spots here at the table that was submitted on behalf of North Star Aviation by Mr. Rutt. I will read that into the record. Dated April 9th, New Ulm Airport Commission. I am writing on behalf of North Star Aviation in support of changing the CTAF frequency at KULM. Flight training at North Star Aviation through Minnesota State University Mankato has increased significantly over the past several years. The increase in enrollments has led to an increased fleet size and expanded operations. Increased traffic at the Mankato Regional Airport has pushed flight training operations to New Ulm and Waseca Municipal Airport. The ULM CTAF is on a shared frequency with many airports, including that in Waseca. The shared frequency can easily become congested. North Star Aviation is proposing the CTAF at ULM to be changed from 1228 to 1230. Placing New Ulm CTAF on a less common frequency will free up much of the congestion that is experienced on 1228. This will create fewer distractions for pilots operating around New Ulm and Waseca, ultimately leading to a safer operation. Sincerely, Brian Rutt. With that, I will, as myself as not a user, I will really open it up to dialogue for the commissioners to see what your wishes are on this.
Well, as a user, I see no problem with that. In fact, it'd probably make it better, because
Okay.
right now you do have congestion on the radios.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you pick up a lot of stuff from a lot of different places, so absolutely, there's definitely.
Okay.
Is there any cost involved with changing frequency?
No, it's just, it's an administrative process with the state, and it can take upwards of 6 months to complete.
Yeah, it's
So-
not
So it'll have to be republished and things of that nature. So Mr. Page has put me in contact with the proper MnDOT personnel, and just as everybody else, they're pretty busy. So it's on their list to assist us with, and it sounds like it's one of those items that they would really take the lead on, and just we would support them with the info that they needed. So
Does that affect or is that something that North Star would handle, the glide slope and the light activation and stuff for the runway lights at night?
yeah.
Being you gotta be on the frequency and light
Yeah.
them up, and
That's a good point. That would have to be incorporated then.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's a change that can be made inside the electrical building that you
Okay.
see at the end there. But prior to doing that, we have to make sure that you have full FCC.
right, yeah, but not that gets overlooked and people are
Sure.
trying to
Yeah, it's
light
good
up
thing
their
to remind
glide
us about.
slope and
So, commissioners, if you're all right with that, would entertain a motion to just formally adopt that request.
I move to adopt the request as written for 123.0.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Last item, I believe it's the last item, on the agenda today, Commissioners, is just no action is going to be needed today. But I did want to bring to the Commissioners' attention that with the increased traffic at the airport, we have received a few complaints about aircraft noise from neighboring residents, particularly, holy buckets, from a resident off of the 3-3 approach end, and then a resident that's in the Oak Bluffs subdivision, the Chancery Addition up off of North Highland Avenue. That's happens to be in the left-hand circle pattern for approaching and stuff like that. So we've had numerous, as you can see with the email chain that's included with the packet, we've had numerous conversations with North Star about this. Obviously, the facility is a public facility, and we can't control who uses it, how frequently they use it, or anything along those lines. As every grant we accept as a city, there is those stipulations that we have to continue to operate it as a public facility. So with that, and just thinking of ideas and what we can do to help the situation, we're obviously not going to eliminate it. The problem won't go away. But there are some things that North Star recommended and brought up for discussion of how can we possibly ease it. Again, knowing full well that the noise will be there. There's nothing we can do about that. So their recommendation would be changing from the left-hand traffic for runway 15 and changing that to right-hand. That would push some of that traffic out west of the city instead of right over the city. Other than that, I guess we really couldn't brainstorm any other suggestions unless the commission has any ideas. We can certainly entertain those as well. Again, with changing the flight approach and things of that nature, there's a form and a process we have to go through, and it's nothing that would happen overnight. We've actually worked with North Star to prepare the form. We have not submitted the form as of now, but it is ready to be submitted if the commission were in agreement to try this as a possible solution. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Again, the email chains are included with your packet for review. And then I guess we'll open it up for discussion, and if the commission so agrees, we could always take a motion to change that flight traffic pattern to that right-hand traffic for 15.
So that's just for 15, not for 3-3?
That's the proposal at this time.
Okay.
Yep. That
Okay.
talking with Mr. Plasek with North Star Aviation, he believes that is the contributing factor that's creating the complaints.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize you could do one of the two.
No, I thought it had to be both.
Brian, do you have any insight on that?
I believe it is going to basically have to be both.
Both? Okay.
Is what you're going to be looking at, but one of the things that we have talked about is if you've flown to some other airports where there is right-hand traffic pattern, it is a little bit out of the norm.
Brian, could we get you to the podium, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, not to say that it's way outside of the norm, but it's certainly different. And one of the things, particularly for the pilots that have flown here, itinerant pilots, people have been here before, if you make that change, one of the things Joe and I had talked about is putting a segmented circle out there that actually identifies right-hand traffic pattern on that runway. That way, when pilots are coming in, they should be checking, their, I guess, and filing their flight plan and understanding all that. But it's that one last visual reference that, hey, this is right-hand, traffic here. So it's one thing that you might want to think about doing. There's not currently a segmented circle out there, so it would be something that would be new to the airport, but it's not a huge cost, item at all. So, but essentially what it would do, and the idea would be, is to put the traffic over the vacant farming area or the farm field or agricultural field that's to the west of the airport, rather than coming over the city. If you're coming in on your classic 45 leg, and then turning it on your pattern, if you're downwind and then turning base and so forth, you're not over the city anymore, you're over that agricultural area. So that's the idea.
And commissioners, we should note that we also, there is one farmer who actually has horses out on the west side that we've received complaints of from in the past. So what may be good for one may not be good for the other, so.
Right, and if we do have to change it to a right hand for both runways, it just changes the issue based on the wind direction.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna experience the same thing from when the wind direction is from the opposite way, so.
I'm not certain though it has to be both, because I think Springfield right now has a right and a left, depending on which way you're coming.
I'm not sure, but
There's some out in Colorado that all patterns come in the same direction
Uh-huh.
regardless.
I'm not certain, but, you know, yeah, my concern, you know, would be, yeah, you got some old pilots out there and you got some guys that are really not up to the latest. And, yeah, it'd sure be horrible meeting them face to face on a downwind run, you know, that would be exciting.
Well, if they're using, you know, proper, you know, procedures, calling, you know, I guess their, you know, I guess, movements and so forth, it should be okay. You
You're
know,
assuming
they
an
should be
awful
doing
lot.
that. It is an uncontrolled airport, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, it could happen, I mean, with some of the people, I mean, you know, old habits kind of die hard sometimes, and.
But I guess my biggest concern would be the safety, because I know, but, and I also say that, you know, still when you're climbing out, it's gonna be as loud, whether you turn left or right, it's gonna be just
Right,
as loud,
yeah,
you know?
and as I mentioned, one of the complainants is off the end of runway 33, so that's not gonna change
No.
that situation, so,
sorry, Joe, go ahead.
no, that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it's a personal thing maybe, but a left-hand pattern is certainly more comfortable for me as a pilot, and I feel much more visible than a right-hand pattern.
Well, it's because that's 99% of the airports are left-hand, and so that's where you're looking for somebody. When you're coming into a strange airport, you're
can-
looking for them.
And you can, yeah, you can duck your head down. It's easier to see out as you're banked into your turn, but, yeah.
Well, if you've flown to like Flying Cloud, or if you've flown to St. Paul downtown, you know that there are some right-hand traffic patterns there, and those are very busy
But
airports.
those are tower controlled.
The difference is those are control facilities, so you do have that working for you. But certainly there are some airports out there that are uncontrolled that do have that right-hand traffic pattern as well. So something to think about. I'll kind of take an IOU to Joe about that. I think you're right. I think you can change one end. It might not have to be exclusive for both ends of the runway.
Yeah,
So, but I can get back to you on that.
sorry
But-
to interrupt, Brian, but,
I think Springfield's that way. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but I think so.
and, so North Star also operates the flying school in Bowling Green, and I believe, I don't remember this 100%, but I believe they changed one end there because of Bowling Green University. The approach, the left-hand approach was right over the university, and so they switched that to right-hand. I believe that was at one end as well, so.
And that's typically a reason why it's done,
Yeah.
is for noise mitigation issues. You know, put the planes, you know, as far away as you can from the populated areas.
So, Commissioners, just so you're aware, the City Council is going to have a work session at this at the April 20th meeting. No action can be taken. So whatever the commission decides or recommends here, I will make sure that gets relayed to the City Council at that work session as well, and kind of how the discussion went and things of that nature, just so they're aware of what your feelings are on this item as well.
I don't know. I'm probably a bad source, because the last time I flew, there was no houses out there.
Yeah, well, that's always the case. I know for me, you know, one person's noise is another person's music. I enjoy the airplane
And,
flight.
and just so the commission.
Long
yeah.
approach on 1-5 over on Camel's Back, and that's where you turn final, is right over the top of our house. So it's just like, we run outside every single time we,
And I have had a couple callers, they're gentlemen involved with the pancake breakfast, and they're just astounded by the amount of use that the airport's getting, and they're all for it. So we get it on both sides. There, we have some that are just thrilled how much, activities out there, and then obviously the residents that are up there have different feelings about that as well. So
If I could maybe just add a little bit of food for thought on that as well. As part of that planning work that we're currently engaged in, one of the requirements is you take a look at the noise. And there are certain noise contours that go around an entire airport. And there is a contour, it's usually 65 decibels. And as long as that's going to be contained on the airport, there really isn't any sort of mitigative things or needs that come out of the master planning process of things you need to think about. Right now, that contour is on the airport property. So in terms of what is allowable from a public, I guess, as far as the FAA is concerned, that noise contour is contained on airport property.
and we as city staff, we just haven't had time yet. We're kind of short staffed in my department and the building inspections office, but we were going to go up with our decibel reader and do some continuous reading up there just to see where we're at. I hope to have that done before the work session, but we haven't been able to do that yet. Just to have that as information, just to really know what kind of decibels we're talking. So
Well, maybe we should table this till next month. I don't know.
Well, I don't think we can make any decision on anything on it anyway.
Yeah.
commissioners, if you wanted to move forward with the change, you could certainly make that motion here today. If you would rather work through,
Well, I think we should hear some of the results of their work session for sure. in
yeah,
case
I was
anything-
going to say if we wanted to wait and see how discussion at the work session goes and that discussion with the counselors, we can certainly do that as well. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting kind of an overwhelming feeling that the preference would be to keep it left hand for the safety of the users up there. So if that's obviously not expecting you to make a motion to that extent, but if that's what your feelings are, I'll certainly share that and share the reasons why. Or on vice versa, on the other end of that discussion, if you're okay with it, I'll share that too. But I'll make sure that they note that it's not an official motion or anything. That was just general discussion.
I guess the way I would put it is, I would reluctantly go to a right-hand pattern. Mostly from a safety standpoint. I've flown right-hand patterns. It's it's a little different, but you can do it. But from a safety standpoint, I would reluctantly go to right-hand.
Better if you got somebody in that glass cab kind of helping you.
Exactly, and actually, outside of Springfield, everyone I've flown in was a towered airport, so.
Is it, I'm trying to figure out if it's on takeoffs or if it's on landings, because on landings you're cutting power anyway. I don't know. When you're turning final.
I think the problem is when you're taking off and you're making your
Sure.
your left-hand crosswind turn there, you're flying right over the houses over.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're doing, they'll do numerous touch and goes.
Yeah, and so that
Sure.
the first two turns there are probably the big culprits.
Yeah.
Those are probably
Yeah.
because then they're powering on and, getting up to roughly maybe 1,700 feet, and then flying that downwind leg until they turn base, so.
One thing to note, North Star, they keep precise data on their planes, on their students that are flying. So we know, their lat and lawns and their elevations at all times too. So if we were to get somebody who's flying a little low or something, we would know that. And from the data or information I've been given, that's not the case. They're meeting their minimums and things like that. So. But, if they send 5 to 8 planes over, each of them are doing probably 3 to 5 touch and goes during the day. So that's a number of operations. So
Well, it's more than it used to be. I mean,
Yeah.
for a
Yep.
long time, it was a dormant airport.
right. Yeah, and as far as, we're talking grant funds and things of that nature, if we can show that how much usage we're getting, that's only good for future funds for the facility. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think North Star is definitely good for the airport. There's no
Yeah, I would concur.
argument
Yeah.
there, I don't think. I mean, everybody benefits from that, whether you're a fuel purchaser or someone that's getting maintenance done at the hangar, whatever it is. I mean, it's a it's a good thing. It's jobs in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Absolutely.
Well, commissioners, like I said, we don't need to take any action, but I will kind of summarize how the discussion went about this item, take that to the work session and bring that back to you in May, let you know how that discussion went. And maybe at that, depending how I'm directed to take this at the work session, I'll update you on that in May, and we'll just go from there if that's okay with you.
Yep, that's fine.
Right, then with that, unless commissioners have any other business today, that would be the end of the agenda. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.